Max Verstappen's 5 world championships, yes, it is technically 5, are not what actually mark him out as a great. Nor were Schumacher's 7 F1 world championships. In the epilogue of The Science of the Racer's Brain that I co-wrote with Otto Lappi, I described how Schumacher's entry into the 2009 SKUSA Supernats and the 2001 World Karting Championships was what truly marked him out as a special driver. While column inches are often filled with writers dissecting damaged legacies, particularly in the context of Schumacher's 2010 return to F1, the truth is that the genuine greats don't really care about any of that. What defines them is not whether they attempted something and didn't succeed, it's that they attempted it in the first place. Anyone who is so precious about their reputation, who measures every move against how it might look in the history books, in my opinion, cannot be defined really a great of anything. Often when we talk about what the greatest of all time means, it becomes a bit of a battle of semantics. For me, great doesn't just mean being a multiple world champion. That's surely one aspect to it. But it's also about transcending the sport and how a driver approaches the way that they compete within the sport that they compete within. You see, when confronted with a real racer, you quickly notice they're not wholly consumed by legacy, statistics, or the endless narratives that swirl around them. For sure, some do. But they often race wherever they find competition. For Schumacher, that expression was found in karting. Much like Senna, he always, in my view, was a kart racer first, and what happened after, where they conquered other arenas, doesn't really betray that fact. You know, you see Schumacher, you see Senna, and to me, I just see a karter, fundamentally. You know, and Schumacher races when he wanted to. And that was most evident really in Schumacher, because not just the SKUSA Supernats and the World Champs, he also raced at Kerpen a few times. And that's what really marked him out. Now with Max, with the news that he raced at the Nordschleife and the VLN series, he's entered that same conversation to me. He'd always gestured through it via sim racing as well, which in itself is a demonstration of an unusual openness to risking one's reputation in a completely different sphere. But this kind of feels different. At the height of his Formula 1 powers, it invites comparison to Schumacher, who returned to karting in 2001, while he was pretty much untouchable in F1 and just at the beginning of his Ferrari legacy. I mean, it has to be said that that was a tremendous risk physically at that stage in his career. And both of these moments tell you more about their character, essentially, than any of their F1 titles. I once contributed to a Ben Edwards piece on Verstappen in the now-defunct GP Racing magazine, outlining what made him an exceptionally fast driver. At that point, the discussion was limited to pure speed. Now with his victory at the Nordschleife, in my opinion, Verstappen can be considered a true racing great in the same sense of Michael Schumacher and Jim Clark. It's not the trophies that elevate him, but the willingness to put himself into other arenas where the risk is not only to losing, but being embarrassed. The difference is that while Schumacher came back to karting, Max has largely washed his hands of it. Like Lewis, he was exposed to the F1ification of karting in a way that Ayrton and Michael never really were. And so it's understandable his relationship with it may be a bit more distant now. I can't imagine the suffocating pressure they would have endured in those karting years, pressures that make nostalgia harder to indulge. Whereas Senna and Schumacher could look back on karting as a pure and joyful battleground, Verstappen and Hamilton were already under this full weight of F1 and expectation long before they arrived there. Now you might say to me, Alan, why aren't you talking about Lewis? Lewis is certainly a great of Formula 1, and if you go back to the Frank Worrell biography of Lewis Hamilton back in like 2007 or 2008, I'm literally quoted in it because he was asking me about Lewis, especially when he was racing cadets at the same time I was. Lewis is undoubtedly a fantastic great of F1, but we're talking about elevation beyond that, and that's why I haven't mentioned him here. But essentially, too often drivers feel they're defined by their success in Formula 1. That is understandable, given its prominence within motorsport. But for those who aspire to something greater, something closer to a pure pursuit of racing itself, that limitation is not worth much. The great transcend the categories in which they race. They do not cling to their legacies, they create them in motion. And that, far more than his current 5 world championships, is what marks Max Verstappen now as a true motorsport great. Thank you for watching. I know this is a little bit different than usual, but I'm just trying some new things on the channel, so hopefully my current audience isn't put off too much from it, but hopefully you enjoyed it anyway, and bye.